My sister sent a fake pregnancy report to my fiancé, which made him call off our engagement. She had no idea I'd been secretly paying her college tuition and covering all the house expenses. So, I stopped supporting her and walked away. You know, there are moments in life when your entire world just shatters in an instant. For me, it happened minutes before my wedding rehearsal dinner when I discovered my own sister, Stephanie, was planning to fake a pregnancy and then dramatic complications during my vows, all to steal my spotlight. But what she didn't know was that I had an even bigger secret, a truth that, when unleashed, would expose years of lies, favoritism, and hidden resentments and absolutely obliterate our family dynamic forever. Growing up, Stephanie and I had what looked like a typical sister relationship on the surface. But underneath, it was a mess. She was years younger than me, and from the moment she arrived, she was the undisputed baby of the family. Even as adults, I truly believe my parents never saw how their blatant favoritism crushed my self-esteem and poisoned our relationship. From elementary school, I was the good kid, the responsible one. I aced my classes, joined every club, and helped with chores without being asked. Stephanie, though, she could do no wrong in their eyes. She'd throw a full-blown tantrum about cleaning her room, and they'd eventually just do it for her. She'd fail a test, and somehow it was always the teacher's fault. The message was crystal clear. I had to earn every scrap of praise, while Stephanie got endless adoration just for existing. Scarlett, you're the older sister. You need to set an example. That phrase became the soundtrack to my entire childhood, a constant, painful reminder that my feelings always came second to Stephanie's comfort. Despite the emotional void, I threw myself into academics. I earned a full scholarship to an Ivy League university, studying computer science and business. My parents came to my graduation, sure, but they spent most of the day talking about Stephanie's struggles with college applications. It was like they couldn't even let me have that one moment of unadulterated achievement. After college, I landed a job as one of the first employees at a tech startup. Those early years were brutal. We're talking 80-hour work weeks, sleeping under my desk, surviving on ramen just to save every penny. But I was driven. I sacrificed everything, and it paid off. By 26, I was the chief technology officer. And by 28, when the company was acquired by a major tech giant, I walked away with enough money to never work again if I didn't want to. It was the kind of exit that made headlines, the kind that changes your life forever. The irony wasn't lost on me. My financial boom happened right as my parents' small retail business, which they'd run successfully for 2 decades, was collapsing. A perfect storm of bad decisions, economic downturn, and big box store competition had them on the brink of bankruptcy. My proud father never told me directly. It was my mother who called, tears streaming, confessing they couldn't make their mortgage payment. That night, I made a decision that would redefine our family. I would help them, but it had to be a secret. I didn't want them to feel like failures, and honestly, I absolutely did not want Stephanie to know I had money. She already had a history of intense jealousy whenever anything good happened to me. When I brought my amazing boyfriend, Mark, home for Thanksgiving that year, Stephanie's behavior was particularly telling. Mark was successful in his own right, a talented architect with his own firm. More importantly, he was kind, brilliant, and treated me with genuine respect. The moment Stephanie met him, I saw a shift. Her laugh became louder, more performative. She kept touching his arm during conversations and somehow managed to mention her single status at least 5 times during dinner. "Your sister seems nice," Mark said afterward, completely oblivious to her overt flirtation. Mark, bless his heart, always saw the best in people. "She can be," I replied vaguely, not wanting to taint his impression with my own tangled feelings. By this point, my secret financial arrangements were fully in motion. Through a labyrinth of shell companies and trusts, I was covering my parents' mortgage, car payments, health insurance, and credit card bills. I'd also set up a scholarship for Stephanie, paying for her college tuition and even her luxury apartment near campus. None of them knew the money came from me. My parents believed they'd qualified for some special financial assistance programs. Stephanie was convinced her scholarship came from a generous alumni foundation. I genuinely wanted to help them without fundamentally altering our already complex relationship, without becoming the family ATM, and without having to endure my parents praising Stephanie for getting lucky, while I tirelessly worked for everything I had. Looking back, I realize I was probably just enabling unhealthy patterns. But at the time, it felt like the kindest, most dignified solution. I was preserving their pride while ensuring their stability. What I didn't realize was how my secrecy would inevitably collide with Stephanie's deep-seated jealousy, creating a perfect storm that nearly destroyed us all. The acquisition of my tech company wasn't just successful, it was the kind of exit that reverberates through the industry. Our small team had developed an innovative data processing algorithm that a major tech giant simply couldn't resist. When the dust settled, I found myself with a net worth over $12 million before my 30th birthday. I invested conservatively, donated to causes I cared about, bought a comfortable but not extravagant house, and set aside a significant portion specifically for my family's needs. I wasn't flashy. I drove the same Honda I'd had for years and lived well below my means. Very few people in my life knew the true extent of my wealth, and that's exactly how I wanted it. When I first learned about my parents' business, I was stunned by how dire their situation had become. They were 3 months behind on their mortgage, credit cards maxed out, and had taken out predatory loans just to keep the store from going under. The weight of that knowledge was overwhelming. These were the same parents who had always lectured me about financial responsibility while indulging Stephanie's every whim. "Miss Preston, are you sure you want to structure things this way?" My financial advisor, Thomas, asked, looking concerned. Family financial entanglements can get complicated quickly. "I'm sure," I insisted. "They absolutely cannot know it's coming from me." Thomas helped me create several legal entities, like buffers, between my money and my family. We established a trust that appeared to be from a distant relative, a completely fake scholarship fund for Stephanie, and a business grant program that magically selected my parents for assistance. The paperwork was legitimate. The funding sources were all me. Within weeks, my parents received a letter about a special refinancing program that slashed their mortgage payments by 60%. Another letter arrived, offering a business stabilization grant. And Stephanie? She got notice that an anonymous donor had selected her for a full-ride scholarship, covering tuition, housing, and a generous monthly stipend. The change in their lives was immediate and dramatic. My parents looked visibly less stressed at family dinners. Stephanie moved from her cramped dorm to a luxury apartment near campus. Their gratitude was directed at faceless institutions and lucky circumstances, never at me. For a while, it seemed perfect. I was helping my family without changing our already fragile dynamic. But cracks soon began to appear. Despite having all her education and living expenses covered, Stephanie started dropping classes. By her junior year, she was barely enrolled part-time, though she told our parents she was focusing on her major courses. I, of course, received the real enrollment reports as the scholarship provider. More concerning was her pattern with relationships and jobs. She'd date someone for a few months, create some huge drama, break up, and then spend lavishly to heal her broken heart. She'd get hired somewhere, work for a few weeks, clash with management, quit or get fired, and then take months to find another position, all while maintaining her luxury lifestyle, thanks to that scholarship stipend I provided. When Stephanie maxed out her first credit card at 21, I got a desperate call from my mother. "Scarlett, I hate to ask, but your sister is in a bit of trouble financially." We helped as much as we could, but with the store still recovering. I pretended to contribute a small amount while secretly paying off the entire card through my financial network. This pattern repeated several times over the next few years, with the amounts growing larger and larger. When Mark proposed after 2 wonderful years of dating, I was ecstatic. We planned a wedding for the following spring, nothing ostentatious, just beautiful and deeply meaningful. My parents insisted on contributing, so I arranged for them to receive an unexpected insurance reimbursement they could use for wedding expenses, effectively allowing them to pay with my money while preserving their pride. As wedding planning progressed, Stephanie's behavior became increasingly erratic. As my maid of honor, she was involved in many aspects, but it felt like she was sabotaging things at every turn. Appointments were mysteriously rescheduled without my knowledge. Deposits went missing. Vendor communications were accidentally deleted from her phone. I tried to chalk it up to her general disorganization, but a pattern was emerging that I couldn't ignore. One night, while reviewing my financial monitoring systems, I noticed unusual withdrawals from Stephanie's account. She'd visited an urgent care clinic and made several purchases at a medical supply store. Around the same time, I found evidence she'd been researching pregnancy symptoms, medical terminology, and how to create fake medical documents. A cold wave of dread washed over me. I increased the monitoring on her accounts and communications, justifying the invasion of privacy with my rapidly escalating concern. What I discovered was far worse than I ever imagined. Stephanie wasn't just jealous of my wedding, she was actively plotting to ruin it. Wedding planning should have been one of the happiest times of my life, but Stephanie had managed to turn it into a minefield of stress and doubt. As my maid of honor, she had access to everything, which gave her ample opportunity for sabotage. The first red flag appeared 3 months before the wedding. I arrived at the florist for a consultation, only to be told my appointment had been rescheduled for the following week. Stephanie had called, claiming to be my assistant, and changed it without telling me. When I confronted her, she feigned innocence. "I thought I told you. I must have forgotten to text you after they called me. Wedding brain, right?" She laughed it off, but something in her eyes didn't quite match her carefree explanation. A week later, our venue called in a panic because they hadn't received the deposit to secure our date. I distinctly remembered giving Stephanie a check to deliver during her lunch break, since the venue was near her apartment. The check had been cashed, but the money somehow never reached the venue. Stephanie claimed there must have been a mix-up at their office and offered to handle it. I later discovered she had deposited the check into her own account and used my money to make a down payment on a new car. "It was just a timing issue with my account," she explained, when I confronted her with the bank records. I was going to transfer the money to them this week. I chose to believe her, writing it off as typical Stephanie financial irresponsibility rather than malice. Looking back, I was willfully blind. The engagement party provided even more undeniable evidence of Stephanie's true intentions. Mark's brother, James, pulled me aside during the celebration. "I don't want to cause drama," he said uncomfortably, "but I think you should know your sister has been texting Mark pretty frequently. He mentioned she kept asking Mark to meet for coffee to discuss wedding surprises for you." Mark confirmed this when I asked him privately, showing me the increasingly flirtatious messages from Stephanie that he had been politely deflecting. He hadn't mentioned them because he didn't want to create tension between us. "I thought she was just being friendly," he said, looking troubled. "Should I be worried?" "No," I assured him. The worry was gnawing at me. "I'll handle Stephanie." When I confronted her about the messages, she burst into tears, claiming she was just trying to make sure Mark was good enough for me. Her performance was convincing, complete with trembling lips and wet eyes. I almost believed her until I noticed her checking her reflection in a nearby mirror to see how she looked while crying. Around this time, Stephanie began dropping hints about mysterious doctor appointments and vague health concerns. At first, she was coy, leaving breadcrumbs for the family to follow. "I don't want to worry anyone," she'd say at family dinner, "but the doctor wants to run some additional tests. It's probably nothing." My mother would immediately launch into a panic, demanding details and offering to accompany Stephanie to appointments. My father would grow quiet, his face etched with worry. The attention would remain fixed on Stephanie for the rest of the evening, any mention of wedding plans completely forgotten. During bridesmaid dress fittings, Stephanie created another scene, claiming she needed a larger size because she was retaining water due to her medical condition. When the seamstress suggested alterations instead, Stephanie became tearful. "You don't understand," she whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "There might be a reason I need extra room in a few months, if you know what I mean." The other bridesmaids immediately swarmed her with questions and congratulations, despite Stephanie's theatrical insistence that it was too early to say anything definite. I watched this performance with growing suspicion, noting how her eyes constantly darted to gauge my reaction. My doubts multiplied, but some misplaced sense of family loyalty kept me from voicing them. Then I found Stephanie's diary. While helping my parents clean their dusty attic, I stumbled upon it. I knew I shouldn't read it. But when I saw Mark's name and mine repeatedly mentioned, my curiosity overrode my ethics. The entries confirmed my worst fears. Scarlett always gets everything. The perfect grades, the perfect job, the perfect fiancé. Mom and Dad pretend to be proud of me too, but I see how they look at her. Now she's having this big wedding while I'm still single. It's not fair. But I have a plan that will make everyone forget about Scarlett's perfect day. By the time I'm done, all anyone will remember about this wedding is me. Another entry detailed her research into creating fake medical documents and her plan to announce a pregnancy, then complications, during wedding festivities to steal the spotlight. She'd even practiced her concerned but brave face in the mirror. I should have confronted her immediately, but a part of me simply couldn't believe my own sister would go this far. I needed more evidence. And unfortunately, Stephanie was about to provide it. As the wedding week arrived and family gathered from across the country, Stephanie's health concerns intensified. She had scheduled her dramatic revelation for the rehearsal dinner, where she would have the largest, most captive audience. I watched her preparations with a growing sense of dread and a cold, hard determination. She had no idea that I knew her plan. And she had no idea how much power I actually held over her life. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change our family forever. The night of the rehearsal dinner, I slipped a thick folder of financial documents into my purse. Irrefutable evidence of my years of support. If Stephanie wanted to play with fire, she was about to learn I controlled the whole damn forest. Our rehearsal dinner was held at the Belmont, an upscale restaurant with a private dining room overlooking the city skyline. Mark and I had chosen it for its intimate atmosphere and exceptional food. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the long mahogany table where 40 of our closest friends and family gathered. The room hummed with conversation and laughter as everyone enjoyed cocktails before the meal. I should have been savoring these moments, but my attention was fixed on Stephanie. She was acting increasingly strange, checking her phone constantly, stepping away for mysterious calls, whispering conspiratorially with one of her friends who wasn't even part of the wedding party. She'd chosen a form-fitting dress that emphasized her midsection, which she kept rubbing absently, ensuring everyone noticed. "Are you feeling okay, Stephanie?" my mother asked, her voice loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "You seem uncomfortable, sweetheart." "I'm fine, Mom," Stephanie replied with a brave smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just a little tired. The doctor said I need to rest more in my condition." My mother's eyes widened, and she launched into a hushed but animated conversation with Stephanie. I watched them from across the room, noting how Stephanie strategically positioned herself so most guests could observe their apparently private discussion. Mark approached, handing me a glass of champagne. "Everything okay? You've barely smiled all evening." "Just wetting nerves," I lied, not wanting to ruin his night with my suspicions. "I'm going to check on the seating arrangements." Instead, I watched Stephanie. The moment she finally put down her phone and disappeared down the hallway to the restroom, I made my move. Her designer purse sat unattended at her place setting, her phone on top, still unlocked. I knew I had perhaps 2 minutes before she returned. My heart pounded as I quickly picked up the phone, feeling like a thief, even though I was in pursuit of a devastating truth. A text conversation with someone named Jess was open on the screen. Asterisk Stephanie, the fake report is perfect. Doctor's office letterhead and everything. Asterisk Jess, OMG, are you really going through with this? Asterisk Stephanie, hell yes. The announcement tonight. Then complications during the ceremony. All eyes on me. Not Miss Perfect. Asterisk Jess, what if someone calls the doctor to check? Asterisk Stephanie, no one would dare. Besides, I'll have a miscarriage after the honeymoon. Perfect timing to ruin their return. Asterisk Jess, your sister will hate you forever. Asterisk Stephanie, she'll get over it. Besides, she has everything else. I deserve one day where people care about me. I quickly scrolled through more messages, finding photos of the forged pregnancy documents and details of her plan to fake crying spells, and eventually a dramatic collapse during our vows. My hands shook with a furious cocktail of rage and heartbreak. I quickly took photos of the entire conversation with my own phone, then returned Stephanie's phone exactly as I found it. When Stephanie returned, our eyes met across the room. I maintained a neutral expression, but something in my gaze must have alarmed her, because she quickly looked away and busied herself talking to one of the groomsmen. Dinner was served, and as coffee and dessert arrived, my father stood to make a toast. Just as he raised his glass, Stephanie dramatically placed her hand on her stomach and gasped. The timing was impeccable, interrupting the father of the bride moment before he could even begin to praise his daughter on her special weekend. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice carrying perfectly across the now silent room. "I wasn't going to say anything this weekend because I didn't want to take attention away from Scarlett and Mark, but..." She paused for effect, tears welling in her eyes. "I've been having some complications with my pregnancy. The doctor said I need to take it easy, but I wanted to be here for my sister." The room erupted in concerned murmurs. My mother rushed to Stephanie's side while my father stood frozen, his toast forgotten. Mark looked at me in confusion, clearly wondering if I'd known about this pregnancy. A strange calm descended over me as I stood up, wine glass in hand. The room gradually quieted as people noticed me preparing to speak. "Thank you for your concern for my sister," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the earthquake inside me. "But I think we should clarify something. Stephanie, would you like to tell everyone the truth about your pregnancy, or should I?" Stephanie's face paled, but she recovered quickly, a defiant glint in her eyes. "Scarlett, I know you're upset about the timing, but this isn't about you for once." I smiled tightly. "You're right. It isn't about me. It's about you lying to everyone in this room." "There is no pregnancy, is there, Stephanie?" Gasps echoed around the table. Stephanie's expression hardened. "How dare you? Why would I lie about something like this?" "To ruin my wedding, according to your text with Jess," I said, holding up my phone, displaying the screenshots I'd taken. The fake doctor's report was a nice touch. Very convincing letterhead. Stephanie's face contorted with rage, but then it shifted to a smug, almost triumphant smile. "You went through my phone. That's a new low, Scarlett. Always the perfect sister, right? Well, at least I don't pretend to be something I'm not. Everyone thinks you're so successful, but you're just a pathetic control freak who can't stand when someone else gets attention." It was the moment I'd been waiting for. I reached into my purse and pulled out the folder I'd prepared. "Speaking of control," I said quietly, my voice cutting through the stunned silence. "Did you ever wonder how you could afford that luxury apartment on part-time retail wages? Or how our parents magically recovered from near bankruptcy 5 years ago? Or where your scholarship came from after you failed half your classes?" Stephanie's smug expression faltered. My mother made a small noise of distress. "Scarlett, this isn't the time," my father began, but I cut him off. "Actually, this is exactly the time. For years, I've been funding this entire family. The mortgage on your house, Dad. The business recovery grant. Mom's medical bills. Stephanie's apartment, car payments, credit card debt, and the scholarship that mysteriously never required any academic performance." I opened the folder and placed several documents on the table, neat stacks of betrayal. "It's all here. Bank transfers, shell companies, trust arrangements. I own the company that owns your house. I'm the anonymous donor behind Stephanie's scholarship fund. I've paid off her credit cards 7 times in the last 3 years." The room had gone completely silent. Mark was staring at me in shock. This was news to him as well. My mother had collapsed into her chair, one hand covering her mouth. My father stood rigidly, his face ashen. Stephanie's expression shifted from confusion to pure horror as she finally processed what I was saying. "You're lying," she whispered, but her voice completely lacked conviction. "The pregnancy report isn't the only fake document in this family, Stephanie. The difference is, mine were created to help you, not hurt you." I turned to address our stunned guests. "I apologize for this family drama. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. Mark and I look forward to celebrating with you at our wedding tomorrow, assuming we still have one after all these revelations." As I walked out of the dining room, I heard Stephanie begin to sob. Real tears this time, not the performative ones she'd perfected over the years. A part of me felt terrible for exposing her this way, but a much larger part felt an overwhelming, bone-deep relief. The intricate web of lies I'd been maintaining for years had become its own trap. And maybe, just maybe, this painful, ugly truth was our only way forward. After I left the rehearsal dinner, I drove aimlessly for nearly an hour, ignoring the constant buzzing of my phone. Mark finally reached me with a text that simply read, "I'm at your place whenever you're ready to talk. No pressure. I love you." His simple message broke through my emotional numbness. I drove home to find him waiting on the porch swing, 2 glasses of wine beside him. When I sat down, he didn't pepper me with questions or judgments. He just put his arm around me and waited. I should have told you, I finally said, about the money, about all of it. Yes, you should have, he agreed quietly. But I understand why you didn't. Scarlett, I've watched how your family treats you for 2 years. You're the responsible one, the fixer, the achiever who never gets the same praise or attention as your sister. You found a way to help them without becoming their ATM or changing how they see you. It wasn't honest, but it was kind in a complicated way. His understanding brought fresh tears to my eyes. What happens now? I asked, my voice raw. That depends, he said, looking at me with unwavering eyes. Do you still want to marry me tomorrow? Despite everything, I laughed, a real, shaky laugh. That's the only thing I'm still sure about. Mark smiled and squeezed my hand. Then we'll figure out the rest together. My moment of peace was interrupted by my phone ringing again. My father, for the 12th time. I finally answered. We need to talk, he said, his voice grave. Everyone's at the house, including Stephanie. The emergency family meeting was as uncomfortable as I expected. My parents' living room, the house I'd secretly been paying for, felt suffocating. My mother sat rigid on the sofa, eyes red from crying. My father paced by the fireplace. Stephanie was curled in an armchair, looking smaller than I'd seen her in years. Explain everything, my father demanded the moment I walked in. From the beginning. So I did. I told them about the company acquisition, the money I'd made, discovering their financial troubles, and my elaborate plan to help anonymously without changing our family dynamic. I explained the shell companies, the fake scholarship fund, the business grants, and all the times I'd secretly bailed out Stephanie. Why didn't you just tell us? My mother asked, her voice breaking. Why all the deception? Would you have accepted my help? I countered, my voice cracking slightly. Would it have changed how you treat me compared to Stephanie? Or would I have just become the family bank while still hearing about how special and precious she is? My father flinched at my words. We don't favor, Dad. Please, I interrupted, my control slipping. My entire childhood, I heard, why can't you be more like Stephanie when it came to being sociable? But never, why can't Stephanie be more like Scarlett when it came to responsibility or achievement? I paid for her apartment while she dropped out of classes, and you still praised her for her independence while asking why I worked so much. An uncomfortable, heavy silence filled the room. Finally, Stephanie spoke. I didn't know, she said quietly. About the money, any of it. That was the point. But why? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Why help me when I've been so awful to you? Because you're my sister, I said simply. And because I thought if I removed the financial stresses, maybe our family could just be normal. Stephanie unfolded herself from the chair and walked to the center of the room. I need to tell you all something, she said, her voice steadier than I expected. Scarlett's right about the pregnancy. I faked it. I was going to pretend to have complications during the ceremony tomorrow. She swallowed hard. But that's not all. I also contacted Mark's ex-girlfriend and invited her to object during the ceremony. And I've been trying to get Mark's attention since the day they got engaged. My mother gasped. Stephanie, how could you? Because I'm jealous, okay? Stephanie's voice rose, raw with emotion. I've always been jealous of Scarlett. Everyone thinks I was the favorite, but being the favorite just meant no one expected anything from me. Do you know what it's like living in the shadow of someone like her? Perfect grades, perfect career, perfect fiancé. I'm a college dropout working retail at 26. And now I find out I couldn't even manage that without my big sister secretly funding everything. Her raw honesty stunned me. For the first time, I saw my sister not as my rival or the spoiled family favorite, but as someone who'd been deeply damaged by the same family dynamic that had hurt me, just in a different way. My father sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of his 63 years. We failed you both, he said quietly, his voice thick with regret. Scarlett, we put too much responsibility on you and took you for granted. Stephanie, we didn't give you the structure and expectations you needed to thrive. My mother wiped her eyes. What happens now, Scarlett? Will you keep supporting us? The naked anxiety in her question confirmed what I'd always feared, that financial support was the only real value I had to them. Before I could answer, Mark spoke from the doorway where he'd been quietly observing. I think that's the wrong question, Mrs. Preston, he said gently. Maybe the first question should be how to rebuild trust in this family, not who's paying for what. I'd never loved him more than in that moment. The wedding is postponed, I announced, looking at Mark, then back at my family. Mark and I will decide later if and when we reschedule. As for financial support, I took a deep breath. It stops today. All of it. But the mortgage, my father began. You have 2 months of payments left in the account. That's enough time to figure out your next steps. Stephanie, your lease is paid through the end of the month. You can't just cut us off, my mother protested, her voice rising in panic. I can. And I am. Not to punish you, but because this arrangement isn't healthy for any of us. I've enabled dependencies that have stunted our growth as a family. My pronouncement was met with shocked silence. Stephanie was the first to recover. She's right, she said, surprising everyone, including me. This isn't normal or healthy. I need to stand on my own 2 feet for once. In the days that followed, our extended family took sides in the conflict. Some cousins thought I was cruel for cutting off support, while others praised me for finally establishing boundaries. I started seeing a therapist to process my incredibly complicated feelings about my family and my own role in creating that unhealthy dynamic. Mark stood by me through it all, never judging, always supportive. One night, as we discussed whether to reschedule the wedding or just elope, he offered an insight that completely changed my perspective. You know what's interesting about your family? He said. You've all been living according to a script about who you are, the responsible one, the favorite, the struggling parents. But none of you chose those roles. You inherited them and never questioned them. So what do we do? I asked, looking at him. Rewrite the script, he said simply. All of you. With that thought in mind, I approached the task of rebuilding my family relationships, not as the responsible big sister or secret benefactor, but simply as Scarlett, figuring it out one day at a time. 1 month after the rehearsal dinner revelation, the full impact of the financial reckoning hit my family like a tidal wave. Stephanie received an eviction notice when she couldn't make her rent payment. Her car, which I'd been making payments on for years, was at risk of repossession. My parents, who had been living in a house they couldn't afford and maintaining a lifestyle far beyond their actual means, now faced the harsh reality of their situation. I maintained my distance, but stayed informed through Mark, who had unexpectedly become the family mediator. He reported that my parents were arguing constantly about money, my mother wanting to ask me for help, my father insisting they needed to solve their own problems for once. Your dad's looking at retirement account options, Mark told me after having coffee with my father. And your mom is researching how to sell the house themselves to avoid realtor fees. And Stephanie? I asked, trying to sound casual. She's applied for 7 jobs in the past week. Actual full-time positions, not just retail. I felt a complex mix of emotions. Guilt for their struggles, a flicker of pride that they were actually taking action, and a lingering hurt from years of family dynamics that had led to this painful breaking point. After 6 weeks of separation, I agreed to meet my parents for lunch at a modest diner, their choice, which itself signaled a profound change. My mother had lost weight, and my father's hair seemed grayer, but they both greeted me with genuine warmth rather than the tense formality I'd expected. We've been working with a financial advisor, my father said after we ordered, creating a realistic budget based on our actual income, not supplements. We should have done this years ago. We're selling the house, my mother added. Found a nice condo that's within our means. I nodded, surprised by their pragmatic approach. That sounds sensible. Scarlett, my father said, leaning forward, his voice heavy with sincerity, we owe you an apology, not just for taking your money without knowing, but for all the years before that. We placed too much responsibility on you and gave too little structure to Stephanie. We see that now. We've started family therapy. My mother added, all 3 of us. We'd like you to join when you're ready. Their humility and self-awareness caught me completely off guard. I'd expected defensiveness or manipulation, not genuine accountability. After lunch, Mark suggested a compromise that surprised even me. What if he set up a proper, transparent financial arrangement? Not secretly funding everything, but maybe helping with specific things with clear boundaries? Like, what if you offered to help your parents with a down payment on the condo as a gift, not a secret payment? Or helping Stephanie with tuition if she goes back to school, but with clear academic requirements. The idea had merit. It would allow me to help my family without enabling dependency or resentment. After careful consideration, I called a family meeting at Mark's house, neutral territory, to discuss the path forward. Stephanie arrived first, looking noticeably different. Gone were the designer clothes and perfectly styled hair. She wore jeans and a simple blouse, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "I got a job," she announced without preamble, "at Westfield Architecture. Mark's friend Carlos hired me as an office manager." "That's great," I said, genuinely pleased. "How's it going?" "Hard," she admitted. "I've never had to be somewhere at 8 a.m. every day, actually accountable for things. But I kind of like it. Having structure, I mean." My parents arrived next, bringing a folder of financial documents. "We've worked out a budget," my father explained, "based solely on our income and the equity we'll get from downsizing. And we'd like your input," my mother added, "not your money." I reviewed their plans, impressed by their thoroughness. The condo they'd found was modest but nice, and their new budget accounted for all necessities while eliminating the luxuries they'd grown accustomed to. "This looks solid," I said, returning the folder. "I'd like to make a proposal, though." I outlined a limited support plan, a one-time gift to help with a condo down payment, contingent on them sticking to their budget, tuition assistance for Stephanie if she returned to school, contingent on maintaining AB average, and a small emergency fund for true family crises administered by an independent trustee. "This isn't an ATM arrangement," I clarified. "These are specific supports with clear boundaries and expectations." To my surprise, my father shook his head. "We appreciate the offer, Scarlett, truly. But we need to do this ourselves for now. Maybe revisit it in a year when we've proven to ourselves, as much as to you, that we can be financially responsible." Their refusal of my help was perhaps the strongest evidence that real, fundamental change was occurring. As we continued talking, another revelation emerged. Stephanie had been stealing from our parents for years, taking cash from their wallets and business, contributing significantly to their financial problems. "I'd convinced myself they owed it to me," she admitted, not meeting anyone's eyes. "I never thought of it as stealing." The admission stunned me. All this time, I'd been secretly supporting everyone, and Stephanie had been secretly undermining that support. The dysfunction ran deeper than I'd realized. After the meeting, Stephanie asked to speak with me privately. We walked to a nearby park, sitting on a bench overlooking a small pond. "I hit rock bottom last week," she said, watching ducks glide across the water. "Got down to my last $20. No credit, no savings, nothing. I went to a pawn shop to sell Mom's bracelet that I'd borrowed. Did you sell it?" She shook her head. "I couldn't go through with it." That's when I realized how far I'd fallen. Ready to sell a stolen family heirloom for cash. I walked out and applied for jobs all day instead. Her vulnerability cracked something open in me. For the first time in years, maybe ever, we were having an honest conversation without pretense or competition. "I never wanted to hurt you," she continued. "Not really. I just wanted what you had. Not the money, but the confidence, the certainty. You always know who you are and what you want." I laughed softly. "That's the biggest myth about me. I've been terrified and uncertain plenty of times. I just didn't show it." "Why not?" "Because I was the responsible one, the achiever. That was my role. And I was the screw-up," Stephanie said quietly. "The eternal child who couldn't be trusted with responsibility." We sat in silence, contemplating how we'd both been constrained by these family-assigned identities. "I found your journal," I admitted. "That's how I knew about the fake pregnancy plan." Instead of anger, Stephanie looked relieved. "I'm glad you did. I don't think I would have had the courage to stop myself." As the sunset painted the sky in vibrant oranges and pinks, Stephanie reached over and took my hand. "I'm sorry, Scarlett, for everything. I want to be better. Not like you. I'll never be like you. But a better version of me." I squeezed her hand. I'd like to know that version of Stephanie. Walking back, I realized Mark was right. We were rewriting the script, creating new possibilities for who we could be as individuals and as a family. The process would be messy and imperfect, but for the first time in years, it felt authentic. 6 months after the dramatic rehearsal dinner revelation, I stood in the small dressing room of a beachside venue, adjusting my simple white dress. Mark and I had decided to move forward with a much smaller, more intimate wedding. 40 guests instead of 200, a local restaurant reception instead of a hotel ballroom, wildflowers instead of elaborate arrangements. "You look beautiful," my mother said from the doorway. Our relationship had transformed over the past months. Without the secret financial ties, and with the help of family therapy, we'd begun developing a more honest connection. She was learning to see me as a complete person rather than just the responsible one. And I was learning to share my vulnerabilities with her. "Is Stephanie here?" I asked, trying to sound casual. My mother nodded. "She's helping arrange the chairs on the beach. She's nervous about seeing you." Stephanie was not in my wedding party this time. That trust would take longer to rebuild, but I had invited her as a guest, a first step toward healing. The changes in our family over 6 months had been remarkable. My parents had sold their large house and moved into a comfortable condo they could actually afford. My father had taken a part-time consulting position to supplement his income, and my mother had started a small online business selling handcrafted jewelry. They weren't wealthy, but they were making ends meet. Honestly, Stephanie had surprised everyone with her transformation. Still working at Westfield Architecture, she'd received her first promotion and was taking evening classes to complete her business degree. She lived in a modest apartment with a roommate, drove a used car she'd purchased herself, and was slowly building her credit score through responsible financial habits. Our family therapy sessions had been challenging, but incredibly enlightening. We'd uncovered patterns of behavior that stretched back generations. My father's parents had favored his younger brother, creating the template he unconsciously replicated with his own daughters. My mother's family had valued appearance over substance, explaining her discomfort with financial transparency. These insights didn't excuse the dysfunction, but they helped us understand and finally, truly address it. Mark and I had established clear boundaries about future family financial support. We created a small education fund for Stephanie with specific conditions. She needed to maintain her grades, continue therapy, and demonstrate financial responsibility. For my parents, we offered matching contributions to a retirement account, encouraging their independence while providing a safety net. "It's time," my father said, appearing at the door. He looked different, his posture more relaxed, his smile more genuine. "Ready?" I took his arm, and we made our way down to the beach where chairs had been arranged in a semicircle facing the ocean. Mark waited near the water's edge, handsome in his light gray suit. Our closest friends and family members turned to watch as my father walked me down the sandy aisle. I spotted Stephanie in the second row, wearing a simple blue dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. Our eyes met briefly, and she gave me a small, sincere smile, not the performative grin she'd perfected over the years, but something real and a little sad. The ceremony was brief and heartfelt. Mark and I exchanged vows we'd written ourselves, promising honesty, partnership, and growth. As we sealed our marriage with a kiss, I felt a sense of rightness that had been missing from our original wedding plans. This ceremony reflected who we truly were, not who we thought we should be. At the reception, held at a local restaurant overlooking the water, Stephanie approached me hesitantly during the meal. "Congratulations," she said, keeping a respectful distance. "Everything was beautiful." "Thank you for coming," I replied. "It means a lot." An awkward silence stretched between us until Stephanie took a deep breath. "I have something for you. Not a wedding gift exactly, but, well, here." She handed me an envelope. Inside was a business plan, meticulously researched, professionally presented, for a small graphic design company she wanted to launch after completing her degree. "I'm not asking for funding," she clarified quickly. "I just wanted your opinion as someone who built something successful." I was genuinely touched by the gesture and what it represented. Stephanie was seeking my input as an equal, not for manipulation or competition. "I'd be happy to review it," I said. "Maybe we could get coffee next week to discuss it." Her face lit up with genuine pleasure. "I'd like that." Later, during the toasts, Stephanie surprised everyone by standing and asking to speak. Mark squeezed my hand as she nervously approached the microphone. "I'm not in the wedding party," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "And there are good reasons for that. But I wanted to say something to my sister and Mark." She paused, collecting herself. "Scarlett, you've always been my benchmark, the person I measured myself against, and always fell short. It made me resent you instead of recognizing how much I could learn from you. What I've realized over these past months is that your success didn't take anything away from me. Your light doesn't diminish mine. It can help me find my own path." Tears pricked my eyes as she continued. Mark, thank you for loving my sister and for your kindness to our family even when we didn't deserve it. And thank you both for giving me the chance to be here today, to witness the beginning of your life together. She raised her glass. To Scarlett and Mark, may your honesty with each other create the foundation for a lifetime of happiness. After the toasts, while Mark danced with my mother, my father sat beside me at the table. I have a confession, he said quietly. I knew about your financial support earlier than you think. Not the extent of it, but I suspected. How? I asked, surprised. The timing was too convenient. Our business troubles easing right when your company was acquired. But I didn't say anything. He looked away, embarrassed. Because it was easier not to. I let pride and shame keep me from having an honest conversation with my own daughter. We all made mistakes, Dad, I said gently. He nodded. But we're finding our way now, aren't we? As a family. Yes, I agreed, a quiet hope blooming in my chest. I think we are. Our honeymoon was simple, a week at a quiet resort in the Caribbean where Mark and I swam, read books, and talked endlessly about our future. We discussed having children someday and how we would approach parenting differently than our own families had. We'll make different mistakes, Mark pointed out pragmatically. No parent is perfect. True, I agreed. But we'll be honest about them. No family secrets, no assigned roles, no financial deceptions, even well-intentioned ones. On our last evening, watching the sunset from our balcony, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The fake pregnancy report that had been meant to ruin my wedding had ultimately saved our family by forcing us to confront truths we'd all been avoiding. Stephanie's jealousy and my secret financial control had been symptoms of a deeper dysfunction that had finally been brought to light. When we returned home, I followed through on my promise to review Stephanie's business plan. We met at a coffee shop, and I was genuinely impressed by the thought she'd put into her concept. This is really good, I told her. Honestly, you've identified a solid niche, and your financial projections are conservative but promising. Really? Her face lit up with pride. I've been researching business programs. I want to apply for my MBA after I finish my bachelor's degree. I think you'd be excellent at it, I said, meaning it. Have you thought about applying for scholarships? Actually, yes. I've already submitted applications for 3 merit-based programs. She smiled. Real ones this time. As we continued discussing her plans, I realized we were having our first conversation as adults. Not as the responsible sister and the favorite, not as the achiever and the screw-up, but as 2 women finding their way in the world, connected by blood and increasingly by choice. 6 months later, Stephanie was accepted into a competitive business program with a partial scholarship. My parents had settled comfortably into their new, more modest lifestyle. Mark and I had bought a new house with a guest room that had already hosted each family member for visits. The journey wasn't perfect. We still had disagreements and moments of falling back into old patterns. But the foundation had shifted from secrets and resentment to honesty and growth. The sister who had once faked a pregnancy to ruin my wedding was now someone I spoke with weekly, sharing advice and genuine connection. The parents who had once unknowingly accepted my financial support now stood proudly on their own feet, with appropriate boundaries and transparent communication. As for me, I was learning that being the fixer, the responsible one, wasn't my only identity. I could be vulnerable, ask for help, make mistakes, and still be valued. The control I'd maintained through secret financial support had been an illusion that ultimately hurt everyone, including myself. Real control, I discovered, came from honesty about who we are, what we need, and how we show up for each other. And sometimes, the greatest gift we can give our family isn't money or security, but the truth, however uncomfortable it might be.